Hey everyone, I'm Tim Radersdorf. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Ohio State at the College of Nursing. I had a pretty circuitous path to get there. When I was in your age, my second week of my senior year, came home from, or dropped my girlfriend off after a soccer game, went to pull out the driveway. She came back and knocked on the door and said, "Can you help me? My mom's on the floor." So I went back in thinking her mom had fallen over and found out that her mother had passed away while we were at the soccer game. So that really diverted a lot of my attention my senior year and ended up having, just applying to two schools, Xavier down in Cincinnati and Ohio State up in Columbus. And didn't really think much about what decision, how that would impact my professional career. Particularly since I'd always been a good student. I went to a prep school, so I was good in science, which meant that they pushed you to pre-med. If you weren't good at science, they pushed you to pre-law. So it was really the only two options for dudes at that time. So I went to Ohio State, got into the grind, but didn't really want to do a pre-med major. Wasn't that interested in bio or chem or nutrition, which were the only three options. So I created my own major at Ohio State to build what I called humanistic medicine. So it was pre-med, but then it had sociology, psychology, and that ran from pediatrics all the way through gerontology. And then I started taking OChem, which Piyush and I have talked about a little bit, and found out that I didn't have the scholastic chops to do that. And I'd been working with a physician down here in Cincinnati over the summer, and worked on doing spinal cord research with him, and found out that I loved the work, but I didn't love the 100-hour-a-week lifestyle that he had, and saw the negative impact that had on his family. I actually lived with him for that summer. So I graduated Ohio State with a worthless degree, relatively worthless degree at the time. I work there now, so I should not probably use those words. But I had to figure out what to do. So my options were either go and get I got accepted into Wright State's physiology program, so I could go there and then make that transition into med school if I wanted to, or just kind of take the time to figure it out. Both options entailed me moving in my parents' basement. So I went for take the time to figure it out. I taught special education for a year, worked at summer camps for kids with hematology oncology disorders, and in that process found out how much I loved working with kids and how much I loved hematology oncology. So ended up going back for a master's degree at Xavier. So full circle, the two schools I applied for, ended up going to both of them. But ended up going down to Xavier and came out as a master's prepared bedside nurse, and then have spent the last 10-ish years moving through various levels of hospital and healthcare leadership, with this last role that I've been in for about 3 years as the Chief Innovation Officer. So it's been definitely not a journey that your guidance counselor is going to tell you is possible. In a lot of ways, I think all four of us have kind of created our own path. But the biggest thing that I've learned from that is the lessons of kind of being patient and recognizing that it's going to work out if you work hard and have a passion for what you care about, or something that you care about. Then you can take time and be kind to yourself and figure out how you can get there.
Piyush Srivastava, the co-founder and CEO of Geneticist. We're local here. We're based in the Triangle building right next to the tennis stadium. Okay, where to begin? I am Mason High School class of 2013. Yeah, there we go. Woo! I finished high school a year early because why not? That was legitimately the reason, because why not? I wanted to get started in the lab a little bit earlier, so I went to Ohio State. I was studying biomedical science. I was working in biophysics and electrophysiology labs all throughout high school, and knew I wanted to get involved in the sciences, specifically in academic research. Was very excited about it, and then I took OChem, and everything was out the door. I rethought everything. As everyone sees the paper articles of OSU student drops out of school to build a business. No, it's because I was failing OChem. That was legitimately the reason I had to walk away. No, but I was at Ohio State for 3 years. The entire time I was working on this very big picture idea of this company that we now call Geneticists. We started it in 2013. My first 2 weeks at Ohio State, I started it with my co-founders, Vineeth and Manny, who are MHS class of 2014. We've been building this thing ever since. Our aha moment was in a dorm room, whiteboard at Ohio State. We dropped out of school, have been building this full time. 30 employees right now. Yeah, that's
Recently
our journey.
received FDA clearance.
Sir. Yes.
Hi, my name is Ryan Eater. I'm founder and CEO of Include Health. I did not go to Mason, but I grew up in the Westchester area. I actually went to Fenwick in Middletown, and then went to school at UC. And so company Include Health is a digital health and wellness company, and it actually started as my senior thesis in design school at UC. When I was in high school, I was just basically an art nerd, right? So other side of science, I just like to draw all the time. In Fenwick, this school's a falcon, so I just drew falcons all the time, right? It's like, that's what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna draw falcons for the rest of my life, this is great. And I was good at math, and so they looked at engineering, and I was like, this is great, but I'm a little bit more on the artsy side. And they're like, what about design? So I found out about design at OSU, ended up going to DAP at UC, and my senior thesis started by seeing a man in a wheelchair struggle while exercising. So I came up with a concept for a piece of fitness equipment that catered to his needs as well as people for all ages and abilities. And then I graduated, moved up to Columbus, started working as a product designer for a firm called Priority Designs, designing like golf clubs for Nike and TaylorMade and medical equipment for Ethicon and Stryker. And I decided to enter my little senior thesis into this international design competition. And out of 1,700 entries from 35 countries, won gold best in show and people's choice. Following year, Apple won for the iPhone. In subsequent years, Nike, Microsoft, and Tesla won. Right, so it just blew my brain, right? So I got traveled around the country, overseas, and sharing this idea. But I moonlit this for 7 years, working as a designer up in Columbus. It wasn't until about 2013 that we raised the first amount of money to start taking this idea further. To date, raised $9 million in a multitude of hospitals, working with the Air Force, senior care, pediatrics. And I think you'll hear what you've heard from all of us, that there is no linear path. It's really about finding what you're passionate about and then connecting dots and figuring ways to just keep moving forward.
So it sounds back to my mind not working. So it sounds like, when did you learn about the business part? So clearly all of you started off with some sort of science. When did you decide, besides OChem, that you were going to take a left path? And when did you learn about the business? Is there anything you can do with the part of the students here on how they can learn about the business aspects maybe earlier?
For me, it's kind of funny because I took one business class in college, and it was Intro to Business during my senior thesis. I almost failed business class because I was focusing on my senior thesis, which turned into my business, right? Right. So, for me, like, you can go and learn the business principles anywhere online, right? I mean, the basic foundational principles. A lot of it's just going out and doing. And it can just going out there and just starting to learn and talk to people and looking, how do you create value? And then you can start looking up like, all right, what the hell's a profit and loss sheet, right? And what are all these things? But like, just really just going out and trying to build, you learn so much doing it versus reading about it.
Yeah, I think the on-the-job learning is a huge part of business for someone with a technical background. I decided to go back to school and get my MBA from Penn State many years into my career, and it was the frustrating part about that was I don't really feel like I learned that much in the MBA program at Penn State, not because it wasn't a great school, but because I had so many years of experience that I had just picked up naturally that business acumen.
And they're teaching that program to people who they have to build that program as if you don't have that baseline.
Right. Right. And I partnered with a lot of younger people within that program, and some of the concepts that were so obvious to me were so new and foreign to them. The part of the business world that I think I learned the most from, as we talk about sort of the technical side, the business side, part of it for me on the business side is really the people side of things. Understanding human behavior, understanding how people think, understanding what motivates people. You will never build your business from startup idea to big company if you don't understand how people think, if you can't find out how to motivate people, if you can't figure out how to form a high-performing team, and whether that's a youth soccer coach or whether it's a CEO of a company, getting those skills, interacting with people and building those teams is something that you will pick up in all the courses you do. You pick it up in high school, you'll pick it up in college programs, the team projects you do, all those pieces of it. Learn from those experiences in terms of interacting with people, because if you don't know how to deal with people, if you can't interact with people, you'll never be successful in anything.
So it also sounds like you're all very successful at failing, right? It sounds like each one of you have failed, but you probably didn't fail when you were in high school as well, right? You did? Or maybe not. There's going down. I have a lot of failures. But I think, can you give me another example of when you had an epic failure that actually turned out to be good, or kind of steered you to the path?
I mean, mine's kind of the obvious one that we talked about, right? So I always wanted to be a doctor. I thought I had to go that path through med school, and then, for a variety of reasons. I mean, I don't think I really hit my intellectual prime until well after I finished my master's degree, and really found out how I learned, how I could focus on things that were important to me, and really engage in that process. So, I mean, I think there are a couple organic chemistry curves where I actually brought the average up for a lot of people because mine was so low. The plenty of failures that came along that, but last 2 Wednesdays ago, I defended my doctorate at Ohio State. So it's in nursing, the doctorate of nursing practice, not an MD or a DO, but, and again, not something that I necessarily sought out to achieve. To be totally honest, it was a part of my employment that I needed to get my doctorate in order to maintain the trajectory that I was on. But that's all about, with failure in life, you kind of have to dangle your feet in the river of opportunity. And there's going to be a lot of opportunities that come along that you should say yes to, and there's going to be a lot more that you should say no to. But it takes a really long time to figure out what you say yes to, and a lot of that is through failing and figuring out what works and what doesn't.
Shifting gears a little bit to that question. When you think of your week today and the roles that you have, what does good look like? What is an exciting day, or what is the day where you're super excited and maybe you want to get approval or maybe something else? But what does success look like? How do you guys look at it on a daily or weekly basis?
Obviously, this is going to vary quite a bit, but for me specifically, I started the company because I wanted to build cool stuff with cool people. So any time where I can help somebody do that or get to do it myself, get my hands dirty, is incredibly empowering. But that's not to say that the other portions of my job are any less important. I mean, there are less glamorous parts that we all have to keep up with. Building a quality management system to get through the FDA from scratch was certainly not as fun. Robert, shout out to you. Thank you, sir. But it's just putting things in perspective. When you're starting to get a little bit tired of your desk job or making phone calls, it's just empowering to be able to go into the next room, ask someone what they're working on, and see how you can help them.
And I think adding to that, like, being an entrepreneur is about extremes. So, like, it's extremely rewarding to build and create, and, like, my highs are going anywhere that our system's installed and hearing the people that are using it say how much they enjoy it. That's why you do what you do. You want to create and provide value. However, there are also very extreme days of trying to build something like this from scratch, right? So it takes a lot of dedication, I think a lot of people ask me, like, what would you recommend, for people that are interested in the space? And, at its core, it's this deep burning passion, right? Solve problems, help people build, right? But I also think you need to pair that with an objectivity about your idea. So I think a lot of ideas, people will fall in love with their own idea, and then it doesn't grow. And for us, we started as accessible fitness, and we introduced software, and now we're a digital health platform, but still solving some of the initial issues. So I think it's being able to have that relentless drive, but also being able to be disciplined enough to listen to these inputs and being able to grow as you're growing the idea.
So at AsiaCare, we're a little bigger than the startup guys here. We're 650 employees. We hit 200 million in revenue last year. 15 years into, after startup phase. I have a product development team of about 40 engineers. And a great day for me is when they prove me wrong. When I have an idea, I go to them, I say, hey, go try this. And they come back to me and they prove to me why that idea was wrong and why their idea is a better way to do it. To me, that's success. That's telling me that my team is thinking differently. They're exploring possibilities. I'm not directing and dictating what they do. They're free thinking. They're solving their own problems, and they're proving me wrong on a day-to-day basis.
So for me, I wear a lot of hats, but the thing that I enjoy the most is running our makerspace and idea incubator, which is called the Innovation Studio. Are any of you going to Ohio State? Yes, great. So I will give you food and money for any idea that you have. So I have a space that you can come to. It's now 7 3D printers, 2 large laser cutters, pretty much anything that you can dream up, fab up, we can help you make that happen, and we'll pay for all the supplies and materials that you need to make that happen. We do 5 pitch sessions per year, and every team comes back each time that they hit their milestones and ask for another round of funding. So I get to do that on Wednesday. I'm going to hear 26 pitches from students, faculty, and staff from across campus with ideas that they think improve the health and well-being of the world. So those are the 5 best days of the year for me. But to build on to what you all said there, the hidden barrier, or the hidden skills of the entrepreneur, the successful entrepreneur, is actually emotional intelligence. So these guys up here have been able to persevere through. We talked about the 3 deaths. You said you think you've had about 17 deaths of a death of your business, meaning that you've hit a point where you're relatively certain that it cannot work again. Someone has put a nail in the coffin. But having the emotional intelligence about how you can either reframe that pivot or that you can get other people to buy into the things that you believe in, I think is so important. And I think you see that from these entrepreneurs that you see an infinite amount of success in. Now, some of these aspirational people that we look to may not have that much emotional intelligence, but I find that the entrepreneurs that I work with on a regular basis, the ones that are continuing to find success, the ones that have a high emotional intelligence and are able to get the most out of the people that they work with and know that they're not going to be the secret sauce for their business. The way that they connect with people is the secret sauce.
So I'm going to take a crack at answering that question too, and I want you to think about questions for our panel, okay? Because when I'm done, I'm going to ask you for some questions. So I was in science. I was a pre-med major, and like the others, I took OChem and decided not to bring pre-med. That is actually true. I'm not making that up. But now I work for Myriad Neuroscience, or formerly Assurex Health, with that company started here in Mason. Okay, some of you are shaking your heads. Maybe you've seen our genetics lab, which is over in the other building. What you may not know is a good day for me is every single day I get an email from someone over the lab, and it tells me how many tests showed up on our doorstep, which means how many patients took our test. Okay? The number today was over 1,500 tests today only. In December, we tested over 1 million patients here in Mason in the basement next door. It's one of the largest genetic labs in the country helping patients, and it started here in Mason. And so for me, I'm blessed because every day I start off with that. So after that, it's already been a good day, right? Of course, everything goes south after that, but that's how my day starts, which is fantastic. So even though I didn't end up being a doctor, I work for a company that's helped millions of patients, which is just really, really cool, right? Especially the fact that that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for things like this, right? With the city of Mason supporting the company, as you heard, giving us, places to have our offices and giving us money to exist as a business. So on that note, who wants to ask the first question? Clearly, we're going to pay you to do that. Go ahead, first question.
Why do you think there's not enough women in the business field?
It's a loaded question with a lot of loaded answers. Inequity. I think that's the biggest component of it. I think that we've had a societal viewpoint that may not necessarily have been the right thing for women to do in the past, and that's certainly something that we need to change. And what I notice actually, and I see a relatively large trend of this because I get to work with a lot of young people working at the university, and I'd say that the majority of the pitch competitions that I'm going to now are leveling out or tipping the scales from women to men, which is a really exciting component to think about, and it's a untapped, not just economic boon for our country or the world, but also a societal boon in having products designed for people by the people who will use them, and people who understand the pain point better. And for a lot of the time, most of what was being developed by people who didn't understand the problem at all. I as a nurse, I feel this pain as a clinician quite a bit. Because if you look at, no offense to the founders in the room, they often have a chief medical officer who represents a relatively large portion, but there are 4 times as many nurses in the world who interact with patients, or in the United States, and nursing provides 90% of healthcare worldwide. But it's very rare for a startup or early stage company or even large company to have a nurse on their board. So I think as we start to understand the user-centered design principles and really recognize that identifying with the end users and understanding how they want to solve their problems, it's going to have a natural flow to having more diversity of ideas and thought and gender and all the things that we really need to be thinking about to improve how we get more women into these areas.
I think one of the keys is, and this is less about why we are where we are today, and more about some things that we can continue to do to sort of tip the scales in the other direction. I've done a lot of talks and read a lot of studies around sort of the concept of imposter syndrome and fear of failure, and the majority of those studies report that the sense of fear of failure hits women higher than it does men. One of the things I've tried to do in all the organizations I've been a part of is create an environment and a culture and a space that makes it safe to fail. We talk about failure on a regular basis. We don't punish failure. We don't spend a lot of time talking about who screwed up. We spend a lot of time talking about how do we get things back on track. Creating that culture and that environment where people can openly talk about failure, openly take risks, and openly move forward when things go wrong, I think is helping. Of the 6 positions I have open now that I'm hiring for, the first 3 that I filled this year were women engineers, and a lot of the conversations we have during the interview process to drive that culture fit we're looking for. We spent a lot of time in the interviews talking about failure, talking about failures they've had, talking about the cultures and the environments they've been in the past. And some of the more experienced engineers that are women engineers that we hire in are coming from cultures running away from that punishment mode when they make mistakes. We teach society that it's unacceptable for women to make mistakes, yet how many of us have failed multiple times to kind of get where we are? So we've got to shift those norms, and I think one of the things we can continue to do is create that culture and that space where we make it safe for failures.
Excellent question. Any other questions? Should we go there and then there?
All right, so my biggest question is that how do you guys have this figure out what it is in your business? What exactly do you guys do? I know some people how exactly do you get through?
You answered your own question. You take the first step. So it doesn't matter how, it's that you start. I think they can give you more finite answers to that, but really getting started is most often the biggest barrier for companies to get to step B. Maybe not to F, but to B.
Oh yeah, well there's a lot that comes before the aha moment. Before you got to the aha moment, you spent a lot of time understanding the problem. You spent a lot of time understanding why that problem is generalizable. It's not just a one-off situation. It's something that affects the masses, affects the target audience that you want to see lives improve or experience improve, whatever it may be. So when you hit the aha moment, you're really coming to the realization that not only is there a problem, but now I'm starting to understand a pathway to solving that problem. I think the first step there is surround yourself with people who are going to be very candid with you in helping you understand the limitations with your aha moment, because there are limitations with the aha moment, and let them guide your pathway, because surrounding yourself with people who have done it before or failed more than you have just allows you to not repeat the mistakes of the past. And you're still going to make mistakes, but I think the first step is to surround yourself with people who will be brutally honest with you.
And to build on that, it's just reaching out. I mean, I think anytime that I have someone young reach out and says, I have a passion for solving X, and I don't know where to go, okay, let me help, right? I mean, most people don't turn away someone that's like, I'm utterly passionate about solving a problem, right? And just being honest, but I don't know how to do it. I mean, my first presentation to get this idea out was I literally was invited to speak in front of a group about this size, and I went up and I go, look, I want to help people. I need help helping people. And literally I had Cincy Tech and P&G come up to me after that and say, hey, let's start talking, right? So now what's great is there's a tremendous ecosystem here in Mason and throughout Cincinnati and all these different places and people you can reach out to, mine on LinkedIn, and just start pinging some of the founders and just start firing questions. And you'll be amazed of how much you can learn quickly through that and how much people are willing to help.
Yeah, absolutely don't be afraid to ask for help, and if you're not getting help, keep asking for help. When I was an undergraduate at North Carolina State, my junior year, my grandmother passed away after a heart valve procedure. They blew up her valve with a balloon to kind of open it up and remove some of the calcification. Some of the calcium particulates floated up into her carotid. She had a stroke and she passed away. It's a known complication, but that's the best treatment they had at the time. So I sat down and I came up with some ideas of a filtering system that you could put in the carotid arteries during this procedure to capture those particulates. It was a great idea. I had no idea what to do with the idea. I asked a few people. I didn't get help. It sat in a notebook for 10 years. The company that came up with the distal protection vascular filters was sold for $270 million about 3 years after I picked my notebook back up and said, man, I should have done something with this.
Listen to your gut. So oftentimes, failures happen for a lot of reasons. The failures that happened earlier in my life were usually because there's a misalignment between the reward of achieving that goal and the incentives that I provided for myself to achieve that. And that was usually based off of what was most important to me. So not necessarily following the goals that other people are setting for you, but setting your goals yourself and really figuring out if that's a true failure, if that's actually a win for you to know that you may need to point your ship in a different direction.
I'd go back to that passion and objectivity. Like if you still have this deep burning passion, you want to keep driving, push, but also don't ignore that failure because that's your greatest opportunity to learn from it, right? So it may be something that kicked you on your ass, but you pick yourself back up, right? You're like, okay, well, that wasn't the right path, or maybe that wasn't the right group to talk to, but I'm gonna keep going, do a little jog here, and then keep going, right?
Especially Smokes, he's really good. Right. And so we play golf. I get done. I said, hey, he said, hey, we'll take care of you. Hey, can you play in October? And I said, he said, we're not in the playoff. Yeah, I'll play in October. Still waiting. So you've been to Augusta before. I have been to Augusta.
It gets tricky. People talk about how when you go from 0 to 10 employees, it's easy, it's nice and relaxed, but going from 10 to 20, everything changes, and then going from 20 to 50, everything changes again. And I think what we found is that you need to be very deliberate about the people you surround yourself with. And that takes time. That's a process. Don't try to fast track the process. It's only going to hurt. But cultivating culture is a very incremental process where you're trying, you're iterating, but it comes down to being very honest with your words. If you're trying to accomplish something, your actions need to demonstrate that, because that honesty comes through. If you have an open door policy and your door is closed when people need you, you don't have an open door policy. So what I've found is that to cultivate strong culture, especially as you're growing, it requires a dramatic amount of candor, and it's really uncomfortable, but it works.